This is a little video of the process of making my first resin molds. It's actually the second attempt. The first attempt I didn't have these tools, so I went onto Amazon and I spent, I think it was about $25 to get this kit of resin tools and supplies, which definitely came in handy. Resin is a pretty messy process, to be totally honest, and toxic. You have to wear plastic gloves. It's best to work outside where there's ventilation. And I also wear an N95 mask. What's interesting about resin is that it is a plastic, so there's like a static electric charge to the material, whether it's wet and also when it's dry, so it tends to stick to itself. I don't know if you've ever tried to open a plastic bag and you can feel that static electricity. Well, working with this material, you experience that too. So you definitely have to be patient. This mold calls for a 2-part resin. The previous one I tried was a UV resin, which means it cures under the light, which is another particularly tricky thing because it means that if it doesn't get exposed to the light, it never cures. It always stays wet, and that means that it could get on your skin and things like that. So in this 2-part resin, I have what came with the kit is like a little measuring weight thing, so you can measure it by weight, although in this case I didn't actually end up using it because I was able to eyeball it. I made way too much resin. The instructions that come with this Sophie and Toffee kit to make your dice really has like no information in it. It's basically just an inventory of the dice molds and things that you find in the box, so you're not going to get a whole lot of help. In order to do this, I had to watch a lot of tutorials on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, of course, related to other people that use the Sophie and Toffee boxes. And because I come from an art background, I knew that these types of materials are toxic, and it took quite a bit of extra effort on my part to make sure that I was getting all the right tools and equipment to put these things together. So if you are interested in working with resin, you do need to put a little bit of time and energy into the research, and then make sure that you have an area that's set up and safe. Your pets aren't going to get to it. And I actually was thinking I should have been wearing long sleeves and also shoes and socks while I was doing this, because it is pretty easy to get messy. So I also messed up putting the tops on, so in the end I have a dice that should have a number 10 but has a number 1, and one that should have a number 1 that has a number 10, and they're different sizes. So that's one thing that also I wish I had marked the lids with the dice as I took them out of the little plastic containers, because they do get confused. It's kind of hard to see through them. The reason that all of the epoxy resin things are made out of these particular materials is because, one, if you're using UV resin, like I said, in order to cure it or to get the stuff out of the containers, it needs to be exposed to light. So the transparent and translucent and flexible material is just practical in terms of getting things out of the molds and cleaning the molds and all that stuff. So like I said, it is a pretty not a very friendly material. If you wanted to work with polymer clay or any other type of clay for making sculpture, it would be a lot safer. In fact, I'm not really sure whether or not I like this process yet. It does allow you to do things that you couldn't do with any other material, but it's just a lot of effort. I was thinking about the cost I spent on the kit and my time, and thinking about comparatively what I could have just, gone online and purchased. I suppose if you're looking for a craft and you just want to spend a lot of time and you consider it to also be entertainment because you're focused on doing something, so you consider it to be entertaining, that's great too. But that is kind of how you have to look at it, I think. I started doing this because I noticed a lot of people online are marketing products and things that they make by hand, individual charms, and resin is used a lot in the process of sort of like finishing things or giving them a shiny, glassy look. So you might be making something in polymer clay and then finishing it with a resin so that it has a nice, shiny, glassy finish. And the Sophie and Toffee box is interesting because every month they send you a different type of resin. So the first box I got, which I haven't tried yet, is actually a squishy resin. So you make like pretend gummy bears. Now, there was something about me that was just offended by the idea of making something that looks and feels like a gummy bear but is toxic and you can't eat. So I definitely put that box aside, and I need to get a better attitude about it. The second one I got was making tiny little succulents out of molds with UV resin, and that was just a disaster. This third box is making the dice, and I feel like this is actually a craft that I can accomplish because the molds aren't as super tiny. The little succulent ones were so small, and it just seemed kind of impossible. Now, what I found with this, which was really hard, is that you get these bubbles on the inside, and so I added, it came with a glitter pack, and then I added some pieces of kind of like transparent pink foil that came with the supply kit. And so you put the mold on the top, and there's this little hole, and you're supposed to kind of like fill it up, but it gets squishy, and the resin goes everywhere. This is where I realized I should have been wearing more protective gear, because I got kind of like engrossed in the process of trying to get the bubbles out. And then I had a whole bunch of extra. Like I said, I had no idea how much it was going to take to fill, so I just did like half of the bottles. And I poured the extra in the bottom of these little polymer clay pieces that I made. And this is what a lot of people do. They pour the resin so that something looks like it's trapped underwater and it has that shiny, glassy finish. And these turned out really well. This is really easy to do. It doesn't require as much skill and patience as using the molds or doing these more complicated things. So getting them out was also kind of tricky. And then I started with no gloves, and then realized that some of the resin was kind of sticky, and I ended up putting gloves on again. So I had my dice, and there were bubbles on the top that I had to figure out how to fill. I ended up using white UV resin that I had left over, and then I had to sand those, and then I used different paint, gold paint and white paint, to give them an overall look that I liked. And this is how the bottom of one of the containers turned out. So altogether, they were pretty cool. The pink flakes glow in the dark, which was really neat, and I'm happy with the end result. So I hope you enjoyed.